This means you don't pay any property acquisition tax in Portugal at all. Bom dia, gente! This is Frederick from Pro to Portugal. The current government, and still the current, there will be another election in Portugal still this year and in 2025, or at least it looks like it. There's a program called Jovem 35 or Jovem 35, which is a program to help younger investors in Portugal to buy a home in Portugal. And this video is about all the requirements and maybe questions you have about the program. So in the beginning, maybe a small summary. Again, if you have a different opinion, please leave it in the comment. What is the problem? In Portugal, you have a quite high home ownership percentage, which is around 78%. So 78% of the Portuguese citizens own their own property, which is quite high. Also, there are a lot of houses, theoretically for the 10 million, 6 million properties, which should be enough. But a third of this property is not available. So, and there is an asymmetric distribution. There are families that have quite a lot of properties. They accumulated them because you don't pay any inheritance taxes on property and so on. So the families accumulated properties and they can pass on properties, but there's, I would call them the last 20%, which is quite international phenomenon in Europe, but also maybe on an international basis. I think it's also the case in Canada, in the United States. So there are these 20% that they have to cope with very high rents. They have gone up on an international level. Still, they're quite low, but still, if you pay 800, 900 euros, and if you look at the average income, which is 1,518 euros, that's quite a lot that you have to invest for your rent. Still, my comment, I think it's a homemade problem because theoretically there are enough properties that could be rented or should be rented, but there's a artificial scarcity in Portugal, or especially in Portugal, but still doesn't help. What I'm saying, the people have to cope with this. You had a high inflation, so also material costs and therefore construction costs at least doubled in the last 4 or 5 years, at least to what I've seen. Housing prices also went up. There was a lot of demand. There were low interest rates in the last couple of years, 0%, maybe 0.5%. They have gone up. So younger investors now have to pay 2.5%, 3.5%, which is not extremely high. But if you have to finance it with together with quite high property price, this can be quite challenging. And due to inflation, your cash flow within the family is also lower. And as usually, although banks promise you to have maybe 100% mortgage, you still have to bring 10% when you reserve a property. So in reality, you always have to need to have 10% cash, which is also quite challenging. I've met quite a lot of families that are paying higher rents. They working double shifts to get this 10% cash and then invest. So that's, and not just because of this, the government came up with the idea, which I think it's good. So younger investors, 35 years, if they invest into a property, they will be waived the property acquisition cost, which varies in Portugal. It can go up to 7%. So this is a new program that they, among other projects that they did to support them. And now we talk a little bit more what the requirements are for the program. What are the requirements? The basic requirements, you need to be 35 and younger, and also includes people that are 35. I'm getting this asked quite a bit because it's sometimes people talk about sub 35. No, you have to be 35 years and younger. One of the main requirements is you should be 18. You cannot be a child, so you cannot just be 12 years old getting the money from the parents and then purchase a property. You should have your own income, so you cannot be depending on your parents. So while you're still a student, not having an income, if you just turned 18 and still in school, you're not eligible for the program. You need to be working in Portugal and having your income so you can prove that you're financially independent to be eligible for the program. Quite important is also you cannot buy multiple properties. So the idea is not that you buy one and then the second one and the third one. As long as you're 35, you just go ahead. That's not the idea. So it's also not meant that you purchase a second home. If you, for example, a vacation home, independently if you don't want to live there, but you could still live with your parents and buy a property and rent it, for example, to tourists. So the main requirement is also it needs to be your primary residency, your first home, as the Portuguese would say. So you should live there, and you cannot have purchased a property before, even though you maybe call it your first home. If it's the second property that you purchased, maybe you're 30 and you already purchased a property when you were 28, 2 years ago, then you're not eligible for the program. And of course, there's a cap, which is 24,000 euros. So anything above, we come to this later. There are certain combinations, but you are only granted a full waive property acquisition tax if you are purchasing the property until 324,000 euros. It's a smaller rate and 58 euros, but still 324,000 is the limit to be eligible for 100%. One of the main questions is that we get quite a lot. I'm not Portuguese, I'm French, or I'm from the United States. Can I get the program? Yes, you can. You don't have to live also in Portugal already. So the main requirement is that you buy a property in Portugal where you would like to live on a permanent basis. So it's your primary residency. That's the main requirement. So also as a foreigner and also a person, even if you're Portuguese, if you're not living in Portugal, you're eligible for the program. Well, let's talk about also some combinations. The main combination is you might purchase a property that is not 325,000 euros, but more. So will you lose the right to waive the property acquisition tax? No. What the government will do is they will, for example, if it's 400,000, they will say, okay, you will not pay any, they apply the normal tax, for example, that the property acquisition tax that you have to, or the rate that you have to pay on 400,000, but they will only apply the rate of the value between 300, or the difference between 400,000 and 324,000. So in this case, you only pay the rate for 400,000 on the 76,000, and the resting money, the 304,000, are still free of property acquisition tax. So even if you purchase a property that is more expensive than the cap, there's no problem. As long as you fulfill the requirement, they will make a cross calculation between the sums. So usually you're free until 334, and then you pay on the rest of the money the corresponding property acquisition tax based on the full property value. So when you buy a property, it's usually not a solo, so you will do this as a couple. And in this case, the question is always, and it's a valid question, what if one is 35 years, so eligible for the program, not paying the property acquisition tax, and the other one is older, maybe 36 years. What happens in this case? It's quite simple. So the waived or not paying the property acquisition tax only applies to 50%. So if it's 300,000, it's a cross calculation. So you basically pay only half of the acquisition tax that you would pay if both persons had to full the property acquisition tax. So you get a 50% discount, and the younger person is considered. It happens that you also inherited maybe a property. So I said in the beginning, you shouldn't have purchased a property before, especially in the first 3 years. Maybe you sold it already, you're not eligible. What if you inherited a property 2 years ago, now you would like to purchase a property? Will you get the discount, or will we waive the property acquisition tax? No, you will not get it. The idea is to finance your first property, and if you already received a property, you will not be eligible for the waived property acquisition tax in Portugal. Is there any limit in terms, because you need to work, and is there a limit in terms of your income? So it can be that you earn €1 million, and theoretically it would make sense to say, you know what, if you earn €1 million, then you can also pay the property acquisition tax. In front of the law, everybody's equal, or at least in this case. So even there are no caps in terms of salary. Maybe it comes in the future, but it doesn't matter if you earn 2,000 per month or 2 million. Everybody that doesn't have a first property in Portugal yet and didn't buy anything in the past, or if you don't own already property in Portugal, you will be eligible for the Jovem 35, so you will be able to be waived your property acquisition tax in Portugal. What if you would like to buy a new house? So you bought maybe a piece of land and then you would like to construct a house. Would you get any benefits? In this case, no. The benefit, the Jovem 35, is made for the acquisition of property that is already constructed. This doesn't apply to the construction of a new property in Portugal. How do you apply for this regime, or the Jovem 35? It's not an application, it's automatic. So when you purchase a property 1 or 2 days before, you have to request the taxes, and if you fulfill the requirements, which are quite simple, so they can see if you already own a property, how old you are. If you say it's for my primary residency, you will be granted this tax relief automatically, so there's no official application. If you have any doubts, please talk to the lawyer or the notary that takes care of the tax request for you, and tell them you would like to participate in the tax cut, and they're happy to help you with the process. Can you lose the tax benefit and maybe have to pay it back? In general, the logic is you should live in the house for the next 6 years as your primary residency. I mean, of course, you get older. If you purchase it with 34, the state will not knock on your door and it's like, hey, you're 36, give us the money back, you're not eligible anymore. That's not the case. The basic ideas, and I think that makes a lot of sense, to provide young people with the primary residency and help them purchasing the property. If you need to sell this property, or you would like to move back to your parents or whatever and like to rent it, always check. But of course, there will be situations where you might pay penalty. Please check with a notary or lawyer, and they can definitely help you to analyze the situation and maybe also to find a good way around it, not to pay a penalty to the state. So that was a video about the Jovem 35, Jovem 35. I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, please leave us a thumb up. What do you think about the program? Please also leave your comments in the comment section. And don't forget, stop surviving, start living. See you in Portugal.